So for our rigid body chapter, I want to challenge you guys to recreate this Galton board. I'm sure you've seen these physics simulations on the right. Basically, it involves dropping a bunch of spheres from a tall height across a bunch of pegs, and it will be almost evenly distributed in this sort of bell-shaped curve. So we're going to try to actually physically simulate that. And we're going to try our best to recreate what we see on the right here. We're going to have a slight variation. It's not going to be exactly the same, but you'll see what I mean. Let's go ahead and start off by adding on a cube to our scene here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select the top face with face select, X to delete, and I'm going to delete the face. I'm also going to select this bottom face, and I'm going to delete that as well. Now the reason I'm doing that is because in edit mode, I want to select everything. I want to scale it on the X axis, and I actually want this to be sort of like a glass container to actually collect everything. And come to think of it, I actually need that bottom face. So I'm going to add that back, and then I'm going to select everything, and I'm just going to scale it in like that. That looks perfect. Now we have this sort of hollowed out box. Now what we're going to do with that is we're going to go to our modifiers tab. I'm going to simply add in a solidify modifier. And as soon as I do that, I can adjust the thickness, and I think that looks perfect. Go ahead and apply that. Now, we're going to have to hide this eventually so we can actually see the work that we're doing inside here to add in our pegs. But let's go ahead and add in our pegs first. I'm going to go ahead and add in a mesh. I'll just add in a cylinder here, and we're going to make this one of our pegs. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this on the y-axis, 90 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and scale it down, and I'm going to move it out here so we can see it. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. I'm going to go to my randomized colors here, and then I'm going to go to my front view so that we can see what's going on. I'll scale this down just a little bit more. Now let's count the amount of pegs that they have on the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to add another modifier. I'm going to go ahead and add an array modifier here. And I'm just going to go ahead and make that on the y-axis. I think I'll do 2 for the spacing. I'll up the count to 5. And there we go. We have some of our pegs. Now, as you can see, there's different levels here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right-click on this, convert to mesh, which will apply our modifiers. Now, what I'm going to do next is going to be pretty interesting. On our side view, I'm going to hit Shift-D, but I'm going to press Z to lock it to the Z-axis. And then I'm going to click to confirm. And I'm going to drag it over on the Y-axis so we can get some kind of variation here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to join these up together. So I'm going to click the first one, shift-click the second, right-click, join, and now they're basically one object. And now I'm going to Shift-D and press Z to bring this down. I'm going to click to confirm, and then I'm going to press Shift-R, which is going to repeat our last action. And now, I think that's plenty of pegs. I'm going to do the same process as before. I'm going to shift-click both of these, right-click, and join. And now we have our pegboard. I'm going to go ahead and scale it down a little bit, and I'm going to bring it right towards the center. I'm just going to eyeball it just for simplicity purposes. Now, if you wanted to, you could stretch these out by pressing S and then X, and we can go ahead and bring them on inside here. And I'll just touch them to the back of this surface, and I'll make them go the whole width. That looks pretty good. Now, if they're sticking out, don't worry, you can just scale them back in. This looks perfect. Now we know that when we drop our spheres, they'll fall down into these different sections here. I'm also going to right-click, Shade Auto Smooth, make it look real nice, and I'm going to give this a quick save. I'm going to call this Galton Board, and I'm going to go ahead and save this because we made a lot of progress so far. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is I need a channel for these to fall through. So at the top, I'm going to need something for them to actually fall through, sort of like a funnel type of shape. So I think for that, I'm just going to simply use a cube. I'm going to bring our cube up in our scene. Now this is just going to be some very basic modeling. I'm going to go ahead and tab into edit mode. I'm going to select this option here, which is going to let us select this edge. I'm going to bring it down using G and Z. That looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my side view. I'm going to scale this down to about maybe half the width or so. I think that looks pretty good. Just a little bit, just enough for our spheres to fall through. I'm also going to go ahead and tab back into edit mode. I'm going to select both of these edges. I'm just going to bring them down just a little bit so we have something that looks kind of like this. Now we can simply scale it down and try to fit it within this little area right here. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that so far. If you really wanted to, you could also bevel the edges, make it look a little bit nicer, but I just want to make sure that I'm scaling it down so it fits nicely within this section here. Now what I'll do is I'll simply Shift-D on the Y-axis. All right, I'll click to confirm, RZ 180 to flip that, and then I'll shift click this other object, right click, and join. Now that these are joined up, we have a way to funnel our shapes in. Now there's one more thing I wanted to mention. We actually need to raise our frame here so that the balls don't fall off of our ramps here. So I'm going to go ahead and tab into edit mode, and I'm going to go ahead and actually just select these faces manually up here. I'm holding shift to select multiple, and then I'm going to press G and Z to lock this in, and I'll just go ahead and line this up nicely. And now if we go to our X-ray mode, which is right up here on the right, we can see through, and we can see that we have a very nice representation of our Galton board. Now we just need our fins at the bottom to collect everything. And I actually think I might need to make this just a little bit taller. So I'm going to move this up just a little bit more, and I'm going to go ahead and select these shapes and move those up as well, along with our pegs. Now I feel like this is pretty good. This is kind of close to what we're looking for here. The next thing I'm going to do is design those fins, but before I do that, I also want to turn on this cavity option here, so it's a little bit easier to see our shapes. This looks great. Now let's go ahead and give it a quick save, and let's add in another cube. Now this cube is going to be one of our fins, so let's go ahead and scale this on the Y-axis, make it nice and thin. I'll get out of X-ray mode so we can really see this. I'm going to go ahead and move this out so we can work with it a little bit better. I'm going to scale it down just a little bit more. And I'm going to try to go to my top-down view here so that I can actually center this and scale it on my X-axis as well. Perfect. All right, now that I have one fin, we need to go back to X-ray mode, and let's see how tall we want these to be. I'm going to scale this down on the Z-axis. I think that height is perfect. Now let's see how many fins they have in their design. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and add in our array modifier. Now, in this case, we don't want our array to go out on the X-axis. We want it to be on the Y. So I'm going to choose 0 for X, and I think I'll choose 2 for the Y. Let's go ahead and give this a count of 6. They're a little close together. Let's go ahead and spread this out by hovering over this value of 2 and clicking and dragging. That looks pretty good. And I think I might thin them up just a little bit more on the X-axis. Or sorry, the Y-axis. And I'll space them out. Now let's see how that looks. That looks great. I'm just going to manually center those, and then I'm going to click this little arrow on our modifier and apply. And this looks fantastic. Let me go ahead and move these within our object here. I'm going to go to my side view. I'm going to move these manually in here. I'm going to scale them on the X just a little bit, make them fit a little bit better. This looks fantastic. Now, here's what's really awesome about our physics. We only need to use a passive rigid body on all of these different objects, and then we need to drop spheres from the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'm just going to combine everything. So I'm going to highlight everything, right click, join, and then I'm simply going to add a rigid body. Oops, that's particle system. Sorry, I'm going to add a rigid body right here. I'm going to choose passive, and let's just test this with one sphere just to see if it's working. And if we need to, we can separate our objects later. Let me go ahead and click on Add, Mesh, and then I think I'll choose Sphere. We'll go ahead and scale that down. Now I'm going to look on my top-down view because I want to make sure that it's going to be small enough to fit between this opening here and between these pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a test fit real quick. That looks good. Okay, that should be able to fall down. Now let's go ahead and put it in the center here. Let's turn off our X-ray mode. Now, we're not going to be able to really see what's going on, so I'm going to turn our X-ray mode back on. Now, remember, we need to add a rigid body to this sphere so that it can fall, and this is just going to be a test. We'll choose active. Let's go ahead and press play, and let's see what happens. And it goes flying away. Any guess as to why that happens? I know exactly why. Our passive object here is set to convex hull for the shape of the collision. We actually need it to be mesh, so I'm going to go ahead and click on mesh. I'm going to also make sure the sphere is set to sphere. And let's see what happens. And now it falls down, and it looks like it gets stuck. So this means we might have to make our sphere a little bit smaller, or we need to change our surface thickness of the collision. Let's try making the sphere a little bit smaller, and let's see what result we get now. And it still gets stuck. Oh, look, it's still rolling. Looks like we might need to reduce our friction. Let's try reducing our friction, our surface response of the passive object. Let's go ahead and reduce that friction. Let's go back. And I'm going to reduce the friction on our sphere as well, so that when we do copy our object over, it has no problem slipping past anything. And just like that, it rolls right through our Galton board, and it looks fantastic. Now, how do we actually add even more of these? Well, we're just going to simply click Shift D, or we could go ahead and add an array modifier. What's easier? Probably adding the array modifier. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Generate Array. We're going to add our array modifier. Now in this case, we want to go ahead and go on the y-axis. So I'm going to choose 0 and then 2. I'm going to duplicate this quite a few times here. Now I'm actually going to get rid of my rigid body so that we don't see this outline here. And then after I'm done in my modifiers panel, then we'll add it back in. Now this looks pretty good. I think I want to go with a 10 count here. And then I want to go ahead and click this little arrow. Instead of apply, I'm going to click on duplicate. And then we're going to set every value to 0 except for Z. Z we're going to set to, how about 1.4? That looks good. I think that's enough spheres to at least get the effect of what we're looking for. Once you have as many spheres as you want, and this is totally up to you how many you want to add, we're going to go ahead and right click, convert to mesh. All right. And then what we want to do is we want to tab into edit mode so that we can separate all these spheres. We're going to go ahead and tab, right click, and make sure you press A if everything's not selected. Right click, separate by loose parts. Now all of our spheres are going to be different spheres. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and click on our top left sphere. We're going to add a rigid body. So I'm going to go ahead and click on rigid body, type active, and then we'll just set this to sphere, and we can keep it at 1 kilogram. That's fine. I'll turn the friction down. That's good. Now I'm just going to quickly move our Galton board out of the way. Okay. And I'll move it right back. Now what we want to do is we want to highlight all these spheres and then shift click our top left sphere. We're going to go to object, rigid body, and then we're going to do copy from active. Now they should all have their own rigid bodies. But before you do anything else, right click, set origin to geometry. And that's going to reset the origin of each object. So you'll see that now there's a little dot in the center of each object. So they should actually fall now. Now let's go ahead and move our Galton board back up, get it as close as we can. And I think everything's set up. Now we just have to press play and see what happens. Now we might have to bake if this takes a while to process, but let's go ahead and see what happens here. And look at that. How cool was that? Now, the more spheres we add, the greater effect we're going to get. And I actually think that our effect here could be a little bit better. And I think we could probably line up our Galton board a little bit better here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it back down. I'm going to shrink these down a bit. And I'm actually going to add a whole nother row. So I'm going to look on my top-down view, Shift D. I'm going to choose X, and then I'm going to choose Shift R to duplicate one more time. Now we have 3 rows here. Well, let's see what happens now. Go back to our X-ray mode so we can see through this. Remember, X-ray mode is right up here on the top right. Go ahead and press play. Now look at that. Now we're still not getting the distribution we're looking for, but our physics simulation sure does work. In fact, it looks like we're getting the opposite distribution if you really take a close look. So let's go ahead and let's separate these pieces on our Galton board. I'm going to go ahead and tab into edit mode, press A. I'm going to do separate by loose parts. Now this is going to separate everything. All right, now we have completely different parts. Now what we can do is we can start to define which parts we want to separate out. So first of all, our pieces at the bottom, these fins, these right here are definitely going to be probably the most important thing. So what you might want to do is you might want to move your box down, and you might want to adjust your fins based on the visual on the right. So let's go ahead and take one more close look before our final simulation, and let's see how these are lined up. It looks like the bottom fins are perfectly lined up with the actual pegs themselves. So I'm going to try to emulate that as well. That looks a little bit better. I think I might delete these other ones, and I'm going to manually adjust them here. Shift D, and then I'll press Y to duplicate, and we'll go ahead and duplicate those one more time. Let's see what results we get with this. All right, now we have, again, these are all passive. I'm going to move this back up. That looks good. And I want to make sure that our floor is touching the bottom here. That looks great. All right, let's go ahead and play this back and let's see what we get. That was awesome. That was actually quite an even distribution. Regardless, the more spheres you add, the greater effect you're going to get. And if you mess with this enough and get your settings just right, similar to what is on the right-hand side, you're more than likely going to get that sort of bell curve shape. So I challenge you guys to set up your physics simulation to achieve that bell curve shape from the animation I showed in the beginning, and I want to see what you guys can do. And if you really want to challenge yourself, use a particle emitter from our later lesson, and that I would be very impressed by. Let me know how you guys do. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and make sure you record your screen with the results you get for your Galton board.